This is most unfortunate. We cannot tolerate anymore all this system. And you know the people are behind me. Everything is collapsed. There is no administration. The people are obeying my order, not their order. Legally, I am the authority because people have voted to me. Now they are using their force. It is up to them now to decide what to do. But I can tell you one thing. Nobody should play with the fire. Nobody should try to suppress the 70 million people. When they are determined to achieve something, nobody can suppress them. Today, tomorrow, or day after tomorrow. They must win. Victory is ours.
Sheikh Mujibur Rahman is the man at the center of the crisis now threatening to split Pakistan apart. In West Pakistan, he is disliked, mistrusted, even hated. But here among the Bengalis of East Pakistan, he is idolized. Sheikh Mujibur, known to his devoted followers as Mujib, is now the undisputed political leader of East Pakistan. In the general elections last December, the Sheikh's Awami League swept the board, capturing all but 2 of East Pakistan's seats in the Constituent Assembly and thus gaining an overall national majority. It seemed like the golden opportunity the East had been waiting for, a chance to redress some of its grievances and demand greater independence from the West. But politicians in West Pakistan were alarmed at the thought of having Sheikh Mujibur as the next Prime Minister, and the leader of the victorious party in the West, Mr. Bhutto, refused to attend the new assembly unless the Sheikh modified some of his demands. The crisis came in Pakistan's 24th year as a separate nation, 24 years in which its 2 halves have struggled to maintain a common identity in spite of the 1,000 miles of Indian territory which separate them. For many people in the Eastern Wing, that struggle no longer seems worthwhile. Easterners have long felt they've had a raw deal from the central government in Rawalpindi. They complain of economic neglect with unfair allocation of foreign aid and investment funds, and they say that until now they've had nothing like the political influence they deserve as the nation's most populous province. They were looking forward eagerly to dominating the new assembly, and when President Yahya Khan finally decided to postpone its first meeting, they came out onto the streets as an angry mob, burning the Pakistani flag and calling for the creation of a free Bengal. President Yahya sent in troops to reinforce the strong garrison already stationed in the east. Unlike the Pathans and Punjabis of the west, the Bengalis have no great military tradition, and they form only 10% of the armed forces. The first spasm of rioting caused many casualties. Central government officials put the number of dead at 172, but the East Pakistanis claimed at least 500 had died. Sheikh Mujibur's response was to declare a 5-day hartal, or general strike, followed by an organized campaign of non-cooperation with the central authorities. Trade between the 2 halves of the country virtually ceased, and central government control over the eastern wing came to an end. Bengalis demonstrated in no uncertain manner that their allegiance now belonged to Mujib. It's this support of the masses which has helped to make Sheikh Mujibur.
When the 70 million people determined to achieve something, nobody can suppress it. It might be they can suppress for a few years, a few days, but few months. But in the long run, the peoples must win. Nowhere in the world the struggle has failed. Nowhere. It might be some more bloodshed, but nothing can happen like this.
Sheikh Mujibur's optimism is not shared by all observers of the Pakistani scene. One factor which makes a Bengali victory less than inevitable is the chronic weakness of East Pakistan's economy. It wasn't long before the Sheikh's policy of non-cooperation, applied so eagerly by his followers, began to create as many difficulties for the rebels as it did for the central government. To feed a population that grows by 6,000 every day, East Pakistan has to import 3 million tons of food a year. With the ports closed, the province was soon threatened with a serious food shortage, which was immediately reflected in rising prices. Rice, which was always much dearer than in the West, increased by 25%. Fish, which with rice forms the Bengalis' staple diet, almost doubled in price. It's not just in the marketplace that the effects of the non-cooperation policy have been felt. East Pakistan produces...
I wouldn't like to hazard a guess because I think both sides are trying very hard for a compromise.
And that would be the best solution?
And that would be the best solution because it means that at the very worst there'd be two countries which are still friendly, but if things get bad here and the separation is done in an unfriendly way, then not only would they be separated, but they would be unfriendly, which is the thing we all want to avoid.
Responsible leaders on both sides have been working hard to avoid the head-on clash that could lead to civil war. The threat of violence is serious enough for the 1,000-strong British community is now moving out its women and children. Other foreign communities, including West Germans, Belgians and Japanese, also evacuated non-essential personnel. As the foreigners left, Bengalis flocked to mass rallies where the dominant cry was for independence, not negotiations. Whatever the mood of their leaders, the crowds gave no impression that they'd be satisfied with a compromise. As the independence fever swept through the country, even Maulana Bashani, an old political rival of Sheikh Mujibur, offered his support. Bashani said that if the president does not hand over power to the elected representatives of the people, meaning Sheikh Mujibur's Awami League, he and the Sheikh will lead a massive campaign of liberation. Bashani's pledge of support came with a warning to the Sheikh not to compromise with the president. It's better to be a hero, he said, than a prime minister. In minutes, troops were on the streets dispersing the crowds. Quickly and efficiently, they set up positions at strategic points. Even so, the incident was a gruesome reminder of just how near Dhaka is to boiling over into fierce intercommunal fighting. To prevent the situation getting any worse, President Yahya Khan flew into Dhaka for talks with Sheikh Mujibur. Despite his waves, he received few cheers when his heavily armed convoy sped into the city centre. Sheikh Mujibur emerged from his first meeting with the president in a very non-committal mood and refused to be drawn by the barrage of questions fired at him from the press.
Kindly don't ask me any other questions. I have already answered. My discussion is going on about the political situation of this country, and discussion will continue because it is not a very matter of 1 or 2 minutes. You require sufficient time to discuss. And tomorrow 10 o'clock again I am meeting the president and discussing. Thank you very much now.
Will some of your people be willing to...
If the Sheikh was thinking of a compromise, he certainly didn't tell his supporters, whose ringing nationalistic slogans followed his car through the streets of Dhaka. But the question now is, has Mujib overplayed his hand? Many of his more fervent supporters expect him to hold out for independence, and he will need all his political skill to accept a compromise solution and still retain his massive political